All right, guys, I've decided I'm actually gonna cut the recess for these fender vents here. If you guys remember many episodes ago, I cut the holes for the carbon fiber fender vents. All the holes are in place. Rather than those vents to mount, with double-sided tape or something to sit on top, I'm actually gonna cut a recess all the way around the perimeter so those vents sit flush onto the bodywork. I've already got this side done over here. It's not mounted in place, and it fits really, really nice. How I did this, I decided to use my 3D scanner. Hi everybody, how are you? My name is Dan Dulac and welcome back to my channel where I am building a V10 powered Ultima Evolution convertible. This is episode number 59 and I think the next episode, episode 60, is going to be the one you've all been waiting for. We've still got some work to do on this episode, namely the rear clam. We've got to finish up a lot of fiberglass work on the rear clam. We've got to paint the underside. We've got to put some heat protection on, install the lights, the wing, all those things. So we're gonna cover that in this episode. I can't wait to get started and get this thing finished, so let's jump right into it. Rather than those vents to mount, with double-sided tape or something to sit on top, I'm actually gonna cut a recess all the way around the perimeter so those vents sit flush onto the bodywork. With the RS model, the bodies are molded with this recess already in place, but on the Evo model, prior to the RS and the factory fender vents, there's no recess here, and there was no hole, obviously, so I cut the hole, but now I'm gonna do the recess so that those vents sit flush. I've already got this side done over here. It's not mounted in place, but I've got the recess in place, and it fits really, really nice along there. I'll show you what this looks like. So here's the recess. I painted the raw fiberglass just with some polyurethane just to seal the exposed fiberglass here, but that recess came out nice. It really is only need to be, call it 2 millimeters deep. It works out great. I wanted to create kind of a cutting template so that, number one, I could protect myself from mistakenly grinding out into the gel coat, but I also wanted something to really give me a quick way to really grind down the recess, locate the recess exactly where it needs to be. And so I decided what I was gonna do is I'll use my 3D scanner and scan the vent on each vent on all four corners. And then in CAD software, I will model up a template that goes around the perimeter of this fender vent, taking into consideration all the compound curves that are in here, and then 3D print that model or that template that will then sit on the bodywork that I could use to then grind around. All right, so we've got this one already done. Let me walk you through the process from start to finish for the front fender vent here. So I have my fender vent over here. I've got all my markers on it, ready to go. This is the front vent. You can see I've got a bunch of markers that I found online, 3D printed. You install these little magnets in there, and that lets you obviously stick these to any metal component. But in this case, since I've just got a carbon fiber part here, what I did is I used magnets on the back side to hold the markers in place. And I'll tell you what, certainly what I've learned in my early days of 3D scanning is sticking on the markers and then removing the markers is a real pain in the butt. Number one, you go through markers, they're a consumable item. Number two, they're a pain to unstick because they're pretty sticky. So what I've got here obviously are these 3D printed markers with magnets on them. Makes it easy to put on. Makes it easy, super easy to take off, and they're reusable. So you can really save on your 3D markers here. So this is ready to go. I'm gonna get going on scanning this with my Raptor scanner. It is good to go, and I'll show you guys how this works and walk you through the scan, the CAD design, and then obviously the 3D printed end result. right, I have got the 3D printed template mocked up for the right rear of the car. So this piece simply goes right in place, right around the perimeter of this fender vent. And you can see the fit and the tolerance is really, really good there. So the idea is that I can then, let's assume this is taped down, my 3D printed template here. Let's assume that's taped down in place and in the correct position. Then what I can do is I can use the inner edge of this, again, as a guide for my Dremel tool. So it'll protect me from kind of going off and digging into the gel coat by mistake, but it obviously will make the perfect shape so that the fender vent will sit right into the ground out recess that I'm gonna make here. So that should speed it up a little bit because it is a very, very tedious task, and wanna make sure I get it right and don't mess it up. Let me show you the tools I'm using here. Of course, I'm going to use a Dremel tool, the medium size 120 grit drum sander on there. This is what I'll use to take down the major bits, and I'll use it in this orientation. Again, using the top of the drum to just rest against my template there all along the way. And then I have some additional pieces here. So I've got a small one, a medium sized drum, and then this is just a little stone drum. It's nice here as it's flat on the top side. It has a nice 90-degree on it. So I can come in here and really finish the corner with this here. I can come in this way. I can also come in flat like this and grind it that way as well. So this worked out really nice. Plus it's not as coarse as the drum bits, so it's less likely to catch and grinds off a very little bit at a time, which is awesome. So those are the tools. I'm gonna hook up the vacuum as well, so to suck up the dust as I'm going. So let's get after it. Show you guys what we're looking at here. So you can see right where I get through the gel coat. You can see right there, I've started to go through the gel coat. So that's a good indicator. The gel coat's, I don't know, a millimeter and a half thick. So that's a good gauge. I'm grinding this to make sure I don't go too deep. Panel cleaner on here, maybe just brighten it up so you can kind of see. Right there is fiberglass and then the gel coat. Gel coat's on the top side, raw fiberglass on the bottom side there. So anyway, that's a good gauge as I'm going around here to use to make sure I'm not going too deep, and I keep this surface relatively flat as well. So let's keep going. It goes pretty quick once we get going here. All right, I've got this all ground out, and the more I do this, the faster and better I get at it, given this is the second one I've done. But man, those cutters work great, especially the grinding stone with that nice 90-degree edge. I can really follow the contour of my template here and give me a nice, crisp, straight edge all the way around. So now, let's take this off, and we should be good. Actually, before I do that, let's just test fit this. This should just drop right in here, just like that. So, don't know if it's seated yet. Let's take this template off. Then we will do some final fit up here. Maybe take just some little trimming here and there, but should be good to go. Put some double-sided tape here just to give it some extra hold. And we can take this tape off. You can see how nice and crisp that edge is there. Beautiful. Nice bevel on it. About 1.5 mils or 2 mils deep, which is perfect. All right, guys, I've got all the sanding pretty much done and this recess in place. I am very happy with how that came out. As you saw, I used a straight block with some 220 grit just to really make these edges on the gel coat nice and crisp and straight. And now this just drops right in. Edges are nice and flush all the way around and ready to be bonded in. I'll wait and bond these in once the rear clam is completely done. I do have one spot where I ground a little bit wide. You can see it right here. Gosh, it's not even 1 millimeter wide. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna seal this exposed fiberglass with some polyurethane paint, and that'll obviously make it black so that any of this exposed fiberglass that you could see through just this little edge here will be invisible. You won't even see it, it'll blend right in. And that I can live with. So I'll tell you what, those templates that I used to 3D scan the compound curves on this vent and then in CAD design my template and then 3D print, what a time saver that was. I could get probably 90–95% of the major grinding done without having to worry about missing or being too delicate around the edge, and then call it 5 or 10% fine tuning with the grinder, and then the sanding block worked out perfect. So that's in there. The other side on the rear is done. I'll spare you guys the pain of me watching me do this 2 more times on the front. So in the meantime, we'll move on to something else, but we'll get on to the next thing. Another update I wanted to give you guys is this. If you remember in the previous episode, I used my 3D scanner and designed this part for the rear license plate. Given I have just a slot for the European plate, I needed something for the North America style. I changed this. I decided to do away with the design. I found some different license plate lights that got me to thinking. So what I ended up with is this. So much cleaner. I don't have the side bolster lights that are on the side like I do in this piece here. But what I'm gonna do is there are some LED lights that also act as your mounting bolts. Here are the lights here. You can see they act as your posts and your screws to hold on the license plate, but you can also see there's a little LED in there. So these will simply, I'll pass the wire through the hole, goes all the way through. This will hold the license plate in place while acting as the lighting setup on this. So I think that's pretty trick. This came out really nice. It just cleans it up a bit. With the diffuser in place, it kind of interfered or didn't look quite right with these light posts here. So this will look much nicer, and it will kind of accentuate the rear diffuser as it comes out as well, since you'll have kind of a clean view, a clean eyeball of it. So did the exact same process on this one, just cleaned it up, and it fits great. Other thing I wanted to show you guys is I finished the uprights. So these are all clear coated. They came out looking beautiful, nice and flat. Really happy with how those came out. Kind of hard to see in the lighting, but man, those are sweet. Those are gonna look great with the wing. And again, I've got room at the base to put a gasket, which I have already ordered from McMaster Car, so that's good to go. Really pleased with how those came out. So now we're gonna take the rear clam off. I'm gonna flip it upside down, and we're gonna get this thing prepped to finish up all the work I need to do on the underside, so we can get this back on the car and then get the lights and so forth mounted up. I have the rear clam over here upside down, and I've been doing some fiberglass work off camera. First thing I did was skin my plenum separator here. Put that there for two reasons. One, just to strengthen up the center spine on the fiberglass, but second, through the plenum holes here, you can actually see that rib. So I skinned it in carbon fiber. I'll finish that up real nice, so adds a nice little visual touch to that. I've also fiberglassed in these veins here just to strengthen the fiberglass on this big cutout opening here. The other side's already done. That's already dried up. It stiffens it up quite a bit. The other thing that'll stiffen this up is the mesh, the metal mesh that I will bond to those engine vents as well. This one I just laid up this morning. That's just curing up here. And then the next project is over here. So I've decided I am gonna glass in the aluminum framing to my wing mount here. You can see I've got the fiberglass already pre-cut, laid out here. And what I'm gonna do to bond this to the aluminum, the initial layer, I'm gonna use some JB Weld. So epoxy doesn't bond naturally to aluminum very well, but JB Weld will. So what I'll do is I'll just skin the surfaces with some JB Weld and then lay the fiberglass mat here in place and just lightly press it in there. And then that will bond the fiberglass to the aluminum just for adhesion against the aluminum. Then I'll wet lay up everything else. And that will give me a good solid first layer bond, and then I could add multiple layers on top just to glass that in. And then I'll obviously paint this entire underside black, color it all in except for my carbon fiber spine here. I'll mask that off before I paint. The other thing I did is I filled in the fender well here. If you remember, I had to cut basically a notch out of this to make room for the exhaust header to pass around. So I glassed this in, that came out good. So we're getting close to finishing this up. We just gotta get that fiberglass bonded there to the aluminum framing, glass in a few different layers, blend it in, then we'll paint this entire thing. I will also then undercoat or spray some bed liner in here. This will give it not only a black finish, but protect from rock chips and so forth in there. Should finish that off nice. One last thing as well is I've got my rear diffuser installed. 6 little screws, puts this in place. That's really nice. I put rib nuts in the bodywork, so it's easy to take this off if I ever have to without nuts behind it. Obviously you can see my new license plate mount as well. So let's get to getting this glassed in and prepare this rear clam for underbody paint and get it back on the car. that is on there. That process actually worked out real nice because it holds the fiberglass nice and tight to the aluminum. So that's gonna work out great. Give that some nice bond. And now I'm ready to lay up all the epoxy. So I'll just pull this back, lay some epoxy down, wet it in place. I've got 2 more layers prepared over here. So layer number 2 and layer number 3. Then I'll just finish it up with some strand fiberglass, tap it in place just to give it some extra reinforcement. And that should be good. Most of the strength is coming from the aluminum bond to the clam. So this fiberglass more is aesthetics than anything else, but it'll give a little extra strength. So let's get after that. And that way this thing can set up overnight and I can keep going on this thing. Camera battery ran out, but I just finished putting on the last layer of chopped strand fiberglass. So I did 3 layers of the fabric and then 1 layer of the chopped strand just to blend with the rest of the chopped strand that's underneath this clam. Once it's dry, I'll trim up kind of the edges where I have my spoiler mounts over there. Give it a light sand just to get rid of all the extra danglies. And then this thing, for the most part, will be ready for a coat of black polyurethane all the way throughout. This cured up nice. I trimmed this all up too. So this adds some nice rigidity to this side. So pretty happy with how that came out. Again, more aesthetics than strength really. The strength's all in the bonded aluminum to the rear clam. The other thing I did was I powder coated my brackets here, my uprights, my triangle brackets. These came out nice. Those go, you remember, right over there. They mount along the body there and to the frame. So that'll be nice. Anyway, I'm gonna shut it down for the night. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, I've got the rear clam back in the garage after you saw me doing all the painting, coating. I put rubberized bed coat here in the wheel wells. Gives it some nice texture, but also will prevent spider cracking due to any rock chips that might get spun up. So I did that in both rear wheel wells. The rest is polyurethane black. The center spine came out great. And now I'm just gonna start reassembling all this. So I'm gonna put in the metal, the mesh grates here. I've still got to bond in the NACA ducts. I'm going to put my bracing back in for the rear spoiler and start to get this rear end buttoned up here. So we are getting close. Let's keep going. All right, vent grates here are all glued in on both sides, as well as the rear ones here. Came out pretty nice. And the other thing I did off camera was I just glued these NACA ducts in place as well. Just again, using some polyurethane adhesive. This works well in that if I ever had to take it off for some reason, I still can. It's not as robust as say panel bond or something permanent like that. Kind of stays a bit rubberized, but bonds really well. So both of those sides are completely done and lined up. And next, I'm going to assemble the rear lights and get the wiring all set as well. And then this clam will be ready to put back on the car. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for this episode. And we covered a lot. As you can see behind me, I've got the rear end all done. In fact, all the exterior body work is done. There's a few little things I wanna do before I unveil the car in total. Next up, we're gonna get the car on the trailer, I've got to take it to the local state trooper station to get a VIN number assigned. Once I do that, I can get it titled, inspected, registered, and on the road. That's in the next episode. Plus, we still have to get the Otis software to unlock the mechatronic that is now perfectly matched with the ECUs from a software revision standpoint. That will let me shift gears above second gear, and we are off to the races. That's coming up in the next episode. So until then, we'll see you guys next time. Here we go. Let's test these lights. Yeah. Yes.